One day, out of nowhere, toxic snow started falling from the sky. The entire power grid across the world just shut down. Anyone who breathed in the snow dropped dead within seconds. Cities emptied out. The world became quiet, way too quiet. And just when humans were at their most helpless, aliens started landing. Far out at sea, 3 girls were chilling on a little boat, just enjoying the day. One of them was Clara. They were laughing, playing around, when suddenly, the city in the distance lost power. Then came a giant blue flash in the sky. The ocean started trembling. Sensing something was off, they quickly turned the boat around. Clara tried to contact land, but all the devices were dead. Then, one by one, her friends collapsed. Realizing how bad things were, Clara locked the cabin door. Snow was falling outside. Let's rewind about an hour earlier. A group of friends, Russo, Tano, Lucas, and Juan, who's actually Clara's dad, were hanging out like they always did on Friday nights, playing cards at Tano's place. Then the power cut out. They went outside to check and saw chaos, snow falling, people collapsing, cars crashing into each other, nothing electric was working. Russo panicked for his family, ran out despite the others yelling at him to stop, and collapsed after a few steps. Gone. That's when they all realized, the air itself was poisoned. While trying to figure out what to do, they heard cries for help from the garage basement. Tano and his wife grabbed a gun and went to check. Turned out it was just a pizza delivery girl who'd managed to hide inside. She was the only survivor. They needed to get a car key that was in a room separated by falling snow. Juan wrapped himself in a scarf, crossed the danger zone, grabbed the key, but the car still wouldn't start. Tano suspected it was an EMP attack that fried everything. Then they noticed lights still on in a neighbor's house and tried waving for help. But the elderly couple inside opened their door and got wiped out by the snow in seconds. Juan, now even more desperate, decided to go out again, this time with a full protective suit and gas mask. He stepped outside just fine and saw something horrifying: empty streets, bodies everywhere. And at one point, he saw someone in the snow, who looked exactly like him, staring back. Juan kept going and came across a ship filled with corpses. A few people were still alive, trapped in a locked section and running low on food. He gave them his water and promised to come back. Meanwhile, Tano discovered the pizza girl's bike could generate electricity. Thanks to that, they recharged the battery and finally got the car working. Juan made it to his old apartment building. It was in ruins. The locals were testing animals to see if the snow was still deadly. He snuck in, grabbed a guy, and demanded to know where Elena was. And just then, Elena showed up. People saw Juan covered in snow but alive, and immediately surrounded him, asking how he survived. Turns out, the snow might lose its effect after some time. Once they found out Clara was still missing, Juan and Elena decided to go look for her. But the locals wanted Juan to stay so they could study him, even though he already shared how he survived. Feeling cornered, Juan pulled a gun.
Antes de llegar abajo sos goleta.
Vamos.
He and Elena ran into a room, and he gave her the protective suit. She went first. Juan wrapped himself in a plastic bag, smashed a window to cause a distraction, and climbed out. But passed out from lack of oxygen. When he came to, he was in a car with Elena and his friends. They had come to rescue him. Above them, more meteorites were falling from the sky. Back at the garage, Tano got the radio working again, but there was no signal. Then they saw a neighbor walking toward them. Turns out, a few people in the area had survived and were working together. They invited Tano's group to join them. Later, Juan and Elena asked to borrow the car to go search for Clara, but the others said no, it was the only working vehicle. So they decided to go on foot. As the snowstorm kicked in, they took shelter inside an abandoned car. Suddenly, a truck passed by with another group of survivors. It looked like there were more people out there, all trying to survive and fight for food. Meanwhile, something was smashing things up in a nearby store. The next morning, they reached Clara's school. Juan found a car that still worked. Then he had another one of those weird flashbacks, this time about the train attack. Elena found a teenage boy named Pablo locked in a cabinet. He'd survived after being bullied. At first, he didn't believe he was the only one left, until he saw the bodies of his former bullies lying frozen outside. Elena and Juan took him home, but his whole family was gone. So they just kept moving. Later, they stopped at a pharmacy. A pregnant woman begged them for help. Elena opened the door without hesitation. But then the woman's partner showed up, pointed a gun at them, and stole their car. Meanwhile, back at the garage, Tano noticed something really weird. A compass has gone haywire. That's when he realized. This wasn't just local. Whatever this was, it was global. The three kept walking and crossed a train track. It was totally silent, just like Juan's dreams. No one in sight. Not even a body. They made it back to the garage safely. Meanwhile, the people who stole Juan's car had stopped at a gas station. And out of nowhere, some mysterious creature, slammed the car so hard it rolled down an embankment. The next morning, the group quietly buried Russo. Afterward, they gathered some extra food, reinforced the garage, and got ready for whatever was coming next. Tano made up his mind. He was going with Juan to help him find his daughter. He even offered to drive. As they hit the road, something strange came into view, a giant wall made entirely of stacked up cars, blocking the way. Some of the engines were still running. It didn't look like something humans could build. Then, military trucks pulled up, Argentinian soldiers. But they weren't here to help anyone. They were geared up for battle. They told Juan and Tano to either turn back or head to the nearest military base, and then drove off without another word. Curious, the two decided to follow them from a distance. Once the army circled around the wall, gunfire suddenly broke out. Juan slammed the car into reverse and tried to get away, but the soldiers weren't shooting at people. They were firing at something else, massive alien creatures pouring out from behind the wall. In the chaos, Juan's car flipped and crashed into a storefront. Giant insect-like monsters, half spider, half beetle, rushed in, grabbed the soldiers, and wrapped them in thick webs. While hiding, Juan had another vision, a burning church and red lights floating in the sky. When he woke up, he and Tano were lying low, surrounded by fallen soldiers. They quietly grabbed some weapons and crept out, only to witness the bugs dragging human bodies down into underground tunnels. Then, Tano accidentally hit a wall and made a sound. One of the bugs turned toward them. Without thinking, Juan shot it in the leg, and the thing collapsed. That was its weak spot. But almost immediately, the other bugs swarmed in and devoured the wounded one. They made a run for a nearby church. Thankfully, someone inside tossed a firebomb at the creatures and pulled them in. That night, the survivors inside explained, the bugs came from meteorites that crashed into Earth. The deadly snow is just the beginning of a full-scale alien invasion. Juan kept having visions of red lights controlling the bugs and collecting people like cattle. With food running out, the group decided to leave the church that night. They broke through a wall to escape, but a crying child gave away their position. The bugs came fast. In a heartbreaking moment, the elderly stayed behind, rang the bell, and set fire to gasoline to distract the creatures. The rest of the group got away, and found a working car. On the way back to the garage, they saw the church engulfed in flames, exactly like what Juan had seen in his dreams. Back at the garage, the locals had finished setting up defenses. Juan was shocked, and relieved, to see Clara had come back on her own. He warned everyone about the bugs. Some believed him. Some didn't. Tano's group decided to head to an island, but when they reached the beach, the water had pulled back and all the boats were destroyed. So, they aimed for a military base instead. On the way there, they stopped at a supermarket where another group had taken shelter. They were invited to spend the night. But something was wrong. Clara started acting strange, hitting her head and clearly losing control. That night, Lucas sneaked off to find something to drink, and saw something moving in the dark. The next morning, the sky was clear. No more snow. The air wasn't toxic anymore. People cheered. Finally, it felt like the nightmare might be over. But it wasn't. Out of nowhere, a group of armed people stormed the supermarket and opened fire. Juan looked closely and froze. He recognized one of the attackers. It was a woman he used to know. Only now, she wasn't human anymore. The military arrived, and Lucas brought them back to the base. But now people were starting to get suspicious of him. He couldn't remember what he did the night before. Then, someone else entered a tunnel nearby. The bugs let him pass. Like he was one of them. Eventually, the group was taken to the military base where survivors were being trained to fight. Tano was suddenly ordered to repair the base's radio system. Apparently Lucas had volunteered him without asking. Tano was not happy. Their mission? Broadcast a message to the city, calling all survivors to come to the military base. The next morning, they got to work fixing up a train and loading it with weapons. When they reached the city, they blasted through another wall of cars and made it to the center. They climbed a tower and got the radio system online. That night, the signal went live. It felt like a real win. For once, people were hopeful. But just as everyone was celebrating, a red light flashed in the sky. A few hours later, Juan and Tano saw Lucas standing outside, alone. He admitted it, he'd been taken over. He couldn't fight it anymore. Moments later, Waves of people under alien control came charging in. Juan's group did what they could to hold them off and jumped on the train to escape. It was a trap all along. The broadcast? It wasn't a message of hope. It was a bait. A signal. Set by the aliens to find and control more people. They returned to the military base, only to find it had already fallen. Everyone had been taken over. The bugs. The soldiers. The civilians. All under alien control. Red lights floated above the sky, commanding everything. And then Juan saw Clara again. But she wasn't Clara anymore. Her face was different. She had been changed. And that's how she made it back before, because the aliens had used her. Everything Juan had seen, those visions, they weren't hallucinations, they were memories. Because Juan is from the future. He's lived through all of this before. And as the sky lit up with a strange blue glow, the real enemy finally showed itself, a humanoid figure. With way too many fingers. That's who they were really up against. And that's where part 1 ends, with a new war just beginning. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next movie.